fall tillage done. Now what?
You know, on the farm, once you get your plan working for you and you know, man, if I can just do my tillage in the fall, everything works so much smoother, and you get in kind of a rut where you're just always doing things the same way, and then you get a curveball thrown at you like this fall where you get excess moisture, wet corn, a late fall, you just can't get stuff done. Now you got to go to plan B, and a lot of times you may have the equipment for plan A. Now how do I execute plan B?
Yep. Okay, well, just a few things that we've kind of learned over the years on our own farm that we'll pass on to you. And this is just some, to start with, a couple things our dad always told us. He said, number one, don't pull the disc out in the spring. We've actually done some disking in the spring, but you run a lot of risk for compaction when you're out there with the disc in the spring. Remember, a disc a lot of times is used as a road builder. It's going to really harden up that ground, so we prefer to only do our disking in the fall or when things are very dry. Also, talking about anhydrous, by the time your ground is actually fit for anhydrous, you're way past the time that your ground is fit to plant. So a lot of times, instead of doing anhydrous in the spring, we'll switch over and use liquid 28% or possibly even urea, just because we can throw that out real quick, and we could even do like liquid 28% after we plant using 28% along with herbicide. We do that very often on our farm.
Okay, so you say if it's dry enough and it's fit for anhydrous, you could be planting instead. What about strip tillage? Now, there's a lot of guys converting to strip tillage, and there really weren't that many acres of strip till they got done last fall.
Right.
Now what do we do?
Well, it's the same kind of deal. You know, if it's finally fit to strip till, you're way past the time that it's fit to plant. So, I mean, you just have to weigh that out on your own farm. Hopefully, you got some of your soybean ground worked. So, and if that's going to corn, you can at least get your corn acres planted. Well, you've got time before you get your beans done. So, you know, it all depends on what happens in the spring. A lot of people are panicking right now, but I don't really worry about it that much, because the way I look at it is, in years where we don't have much time in the fall, the good Lord usually gives us some extra time in the spring, so chances are we'll have a dry spring.
If you're really overly saturated in the fall, that's going to lead to some flooding issues in the spring and some other problems in the spring. So it is important that you get your whole system working, and if you've been getting by not getting proper drainage in your field, but you still could get in and get some tillage done and get things to work for you, you know what, when you get these extreme years like this in some parts of the country, boy, you're just in big trouble, and you really need to look at your core problem that, you know what, it wouldn't have been such a wet fall if I would have had proper drainage in my field.
Yep, so once you get done with your planting this spring, what we want you to do is get started tiling. On our farm, we'll start right after we're done soybean planting, so usually mid-May to late May, we'll get started tiling, and we'll tile all the way up through mid-July in corn and soybeans, and once we hit mid-July, or let's call it August, and the wheat is off, then we can get started tiling in wheat ground. You've got to get your tiling done in the summertime if you're in an area that's had traditionally wet falls and springs. Just get it done in the summertime. It's not that big a deal. You don't tear up much crop. Just get it done.
The other thing is going to be just dealing with that residue in the spring, especially in many areas. There was some pretty good yielding corn this year. Now you've got all those wet stalks that didn't get chopped up and worked, and you know, it's real similar to the situation we were in this spring, even on our own farm.
Okay, well, a chopping corn head makes an enormous amount of difference, so that's one of the things we would advise you to do. You can see it on our farm when you look at the conventional corn head versus that chopping corn head. It's a huge difference in the amount of residue that's left in the fall, and a huge difference in the spring. Whether you have the chopping corn head or you don't, one thing that we've learned on our own farm, using a Salford machine in the spring is a much better option than a disc in terms of chopping that residue up. Now, you might have to make a couple passes with that Salford, but it really does help. We did a lot of that this last spring. It's just important to not create an overabundance of compaction going out there with that disc. You want to try to chop up the stalks, chop up the residue, and be able to go out and do a good job planting.
Okay, so plan A didn't work for you. You didn't get your tillage done. You have to start thinking about plan B, and when you do, just get your goal in mind. And the big goal is you've got to get great seed to soil contact when you're planting. So whether that means you're going to do no-till and you can still get that seed to soil contact, that's fine. Or if you need to do some tillage, whatever kind of tillage you do, just make sure that seed to soil contact is going to be fine. So if you have to size up that residue with a Salford machine, if you have to do some full-scale tillage, or you still want to do your strip till, it's all okay as long as you can get that crop in, so it's going to be successful for you.
Yep, so again, seed to soil contact, that is the most important thing. That's what we're after. But don't forget weed control.